The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of Ethan's bedroom, casting a warm glow on the small, cozy house in Cedarville. Ethan sat up in bed, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion pressing down on him. His body ached, and a sense of anxiety gnawed at the edges of his mind. He glanced at the clock on his bedside table. It was time to take his morning medication. "Ethan, breakfast is ready," Emily's voice called from the kitchen. She was already dressed in her neat pharmacist's uniform, her demeanor as precise and organized as ever. But lately, something about her actions had begun to unsettle Ethan. As he made his way to the kitchen, Ethan's thoughts drifted back to the articles he had read online. Emily greeted him with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said, handing him a tray meticulously arranged with various pills. "Thanks, Mom," Ethan replied, forcing a smile as he took the tray. He watched as Emily's eyes flickered over the pills, ensuring each one was in its proper place. "Do I really need all of these?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. "I've been feeling pretty tired lately." Emily's gaze snapped to his, her expression carefully controlled. "Of course you do, Ethan. Remember, the doctor said your condition requires strict adherence to your medication schedule." Her voice was firm, but there was an edge to it that Ethan hadn't noticed before. He nodded slowly, his mind racing. "Yeah, I remember," he muttered, swallowing the pills with a gulp of water. The familiar routine felt increasingly burdensome, and he couldn't ignore the tension that seemed to hang in the air between them. After breakfast, Ethan retreated to his room, his thoughts in turmoil. He sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen, the articles on drug interactions and side effects still open. The doubts that had been simmering in the back of his mind now demanded his full attention. His mother had always been so meticulous, so caring. But what if her meticulousness was hiding something more sinister? The idea seemed absurd, yet the inconsistencies were becoming too significant to ignore. Feeling a surge of determination, Ethan decided he needed to know the truth. He browsed online for surveillance equipment, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and guilt. It felt wrong to spy on his own mother, but the stakes were too high to let his suspicions go uninvestigated. Later that day, Ethan received a small package containing a discreet camera. The kitchen, usually a place of warmth and comfort, felt cold under the dim evening light. The shadows cast by the flickering bulb added an eerie atmosphere as Ethan stood quietly, his eyes fixed on the small camera he had just installed between two cookbooks on the kitchen shelf. He had chosen this spot carefully, ensuring it had a clear view of the counter where Emily prepared his medications every morning. Ethan's heart pounded with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. He had never imagined spying on his own mother, but the growing doubts about his medication left him no choice. He needed answers, and this was the only way he could get them. As night fell and the house grew silent, Ethan sat alone in his room, his laptop open in front of him. The first set of videos from the hidden camera was ready for review. He clicked on the play button, his breath hitching as the footage began to roll. The videos showed the familiar morning routine. Emily moving around the kitchen with her usual efficiency, preparing Ethan's breakfast and medications. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. But then, something caught Ethan's eye. He leaned closer to the screen, his pulse quickening. In the dim light of the kitchen, Emily reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small white packet. Ethan watched in disbelief as she carefully mixed its contents with his pills. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This was no ordinary medication. She was adding something else, something he hadn't been told about. Ethan paused the video, his hands trembling. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. How could his own mother, the person he trusted most in the world, do something like this? He felt a wave of anger and sorrow wash over him, his mind racing with questions and fears. For a moment, he simply sat there, staring at the frozen image on his screen. Then, with a determined breath, he hit record. He needed to document this, to gather evidence. His next steps were clear. He had to confront the truth, no matter how painful. Ethan spent the next hour meticulously reviewing and saving the videos. Each frame he captured felt like another layer of trust being stripped away. Once he had everything he needed, he copied the files onto a flash drive, his resolve hardening with each passing minute. The waiting room of Dr. Carter's clinic was a sanctuary of calm, with natural light streaming through the large windows, illuminating the framed diplomas and travel photos adorning the walls. Ethan sat on the edge of his seat, his fingers tapping nervously on the flash drive in his pocket. The evidence it contained felt like a heavy burden, yet also a beacon of hope. "Ethan, Dr. Carter will see you now," the receptionist announced with a warm smile. Ethan stood, taking a deep breath as he followed her down the hall. The room he entered was orderly and professional, yet inviting. Dr. Carter, a middle-aged man with a kind demeanor, stood up to greet him. "Good to see you, Ethan. Please have a seat," Dr. Carter said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. "What brings you in today?" Ethan swallowed hard, his anxiety palpable. "I think my mum has been adding something to my medications," he began, handing over the flash drive. "I set up a camera and recorded her tampering with my pills." Dr. Carter's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. He plugged the flash drive into his computer and started reviewing the footage. Ethan watched his face closely, looking for any sign of reassurance or alarm. The silence stretched on as Dr. Carter meticulously examined the videos. Finally, he looked up, his face grave. "Ethan, it's good you came to me with this. From what I can see, your mother is definitely adding something to your medications. We need to figure out what it is and how it's affecting you." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and dread. "What should I do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We'll start with a thorough analysis of your current medication," Dr. Carter replied, his tone calm but serious. "I'll take samples and send them to the lab for testing. We need to identify the substances involved." Ethan nodded, grateful for the doctor's clear-headed approach. Dr. Carter proceeded to collect samples of Ethan's medications, meticulously labeling each one before placing them in a secure container. "These results will take a few days," Dr. Carter said, sealing the container. "In the meantime, I want you to stay vigilant. Don't confront your mother until we have all the information, and if you feel worse, come to me immediately." Ethan nodded again, a small flicker of hope igniting within him. "Thank you, Dr. Carter. I just want to understand what's happening to me." Dr. Carter offered a reassuring smile. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Ethan. You're not alone in this." Few days later, Dr. Carter calls Ethan to his office. The quiet of Dr. Carter's clinic was almost oppressive as Ethan sat in the waiting room, the soft light from the windows casting a gentle glow over the room. "Ethan, Dr. Carter will see you now," the receptionist announced. Ethan stood up, his legs feeling like lead as he made his way to the familiar consultation room. Dr. Carter was already there, a folder in hand, his expression serious yet composed. "Please, take a seat, Ethan," Dr. Carter said, his tone gentle but firm. Ethan sank into the chair, his heart pounding. "Did you get the results?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Carter nodded, opening the folder. "Yes, we have the results. I won't sugarcoat this. Ethan. The analysis shows that your mother has been adding a substance to your medication that is known to be highly addictive and harmful. Ethan felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. He gripped the arms of the chair, his knuckles turning white. Addictive? He echoed, disbelief and hurt lacing his voice. Dr. Carter leaned forward, his eyes filled with concern. Yes, the substance can cause dependency, and long-term use can lead to serious health issues. This is very serious, Ethan. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Ethan's mind reeled. Why would she do this? He whispered, more to himself than to Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. I can't answer that, but I can help you deal with the aftermath. You need to confront her, but carefully. We'll need to plan how to approach this to ensure your safety and well-being. Ethan nodded, the initial shock giving way to a steely resolve. I need to talk to her. I need to know why. Dr. Carter nodded. I'll be here for you every step of the way. We'll need to develop a safe strategy to confront her, and it might be wise to have a third party present. Perhaps a counselor or even law enforcement, depending on how she might react. Ethan stood, a mix of determination and trepidation coursing through him. Thank you, Dr. Carter. I'll be careful. As he left the clinic, the weight of the situation settled heavily on his shoulders. The journey home felt interminable, each step closer to a confrontation he both dreaded and needed. His mind whirled with thoughts and emotions, a storm of betrayal, anger, and a desperate need for answers. The family kitchen, once a haven of warmth and comfort, felt heavy with unspoken tension as the evening shadows lengthened. Ethan stood at the counter, his mind racing as he braced himself for the conversation ahead. The aroma of dinner lingered in the air, but tonight, the familiar scents brought no comfort. Ethan, are you okay? Emily's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood in the doorway, her face lined with worry. You've been quiet all evening. Ethan took a deep breath, turning to face her. Mum, we need to talk. His voice was steady, but his heart pounded. Emily's eyes widened, sensing the gravity in his tone. Of course, honey. What's wrong? Ethan clenched his fists, trying to find the right words. I know about the substances you've been adding to my medications. The color drained from Emily's face. Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about. He shook his head, pulling out his phone and showing her the video he had recorded. I set up a camera. I saw you mixing something with my pills. Emily's shoulders slumped as she sank into a chair. Ethan, please try to understand. I did it because I was scared. I was afraid of losing you. Ethan's voice shook with a mixture of anger and pain. You were making me dependent on those drugs. Do you have any idea what that's done to me? Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. I thought I was protecting you. After your father left, I couldn't bear the thought of you getting sick or leaving me too. Ethan's resolve wavered, the sight of his mother's tears stirring a conflict within him. Mum, you can't justify this. You've hurt me more than you can imagine. Emily sobbed, reaching out for him. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Please believe me. Ethan stepped back, shaking his head. I need to report this. What you did is illegal and dangerous. I can't let this continue. Emily's face crumpled in despair. Please, Ethan, don't. I'll stop, I promise. Just don't involve the police. But Ethan had made up his mind. He knew what he had to do despite the agony it caused him. I'm sorry, Mom. I have to go. He walked out of the house, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. The journey to the police station felt surreal, each step echoing with the finality of his choice. As he entered the station, he took a deep breath and approached the front desk. "I need to report a case of medication tampering," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. The officer looked up, nodding solemnly. "Please have a seat. An investigator will be with you shortly." The police station buzzed with activity, but Ethan felt isolated as he sat in the waiting area, his heart heavy with dread. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over the room, making the atmosphere feel even more sterile and oppressive. "Mr. Ethan, please follow me." A firm voice interrupted his thoughts. Inspector Thompson, a seasoned officer with a reputation for thoroughness, stood before him. Ethan stood, swallowing hard as he followed Inspector Thompson down a corridor lined with glass windows and closed doors. They entered a small, serious-looking interrogation room. The stark walls and cold metal table did nothing to ease Ethan's anxiety. "Please, have a seat," Inspector Thompson said, his tone professional but not unkind. Ethan complied, his hands trembling slightly as he placed the flash drive containing the evidence on the table. "Tell me everything," Thompson said, leaning forward with an attentive expression. Ethan took a deep breath, recounting the entire ordeal. His suspicions, the hidden camera, the footage, and the confirmation from Dr. Carter. Thompson listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When Ethan finished, the inspector nodded, inserting the flash drive into a laptop and watching the videos with a furrowed brow. "This is serious," Thompson said after a long silence, his eyes meeting Ethan's. "We need to bring your mother in for questioning immediately." An hour later, Emily was escorted into the station, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. Ethan watched from a distance, his heart aching at the sight of his mother in distress. Inspector Thompson led her into the interrogation room, closing the door behind them. "Ethan, why?" Emily's voice trembled as she spoke. "Why did you do this?" "Mom, I had to," Ethan replied softly, the pain evident in his voice. "You were hurting me, and I couldn't let it continue." Inside the room, Thompson began the formal interrogation. "Mrs. Emily, we have evidence that you've been tampering with your son's medication. Do you have anything to say?" Emily's hands shook as she clasped them together, tears streaming down her face. "I did it," she confessed, her voice barely audible. "I did it because I was afraid of losing him. I thought it was the only way to keep him safe." Thompson's expression remained impassive as he continued questioning, documenting every detail. Emily's confession was raw and filled with regret, each word weighing heavily in the room. Ethan watched through the observation window, feeling a tumult of emotions: betrayal, sorrow, and a deep-seated conflict between love for his mother and the reality of her actions. The sight of her breaking down, confessing to everything, was almost too much to bear. Inspector Thompson emerged from the room, his face set in a grim line. "We have enough to proceed with charges. She will be taken into custody and formally charged with endangering your health." Ethan nodded numbly, the reality of the situation crashing down on him. He had hoped for some resolution, but seeing his mother taken away in handcuffs was a sight that would haunt him forever. As the officers led Emily out, she turned to Ethan one last time. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I never meant to hurt you." Tears welled up in his eyes as he whispered, "I know, Mom. I know." With Emily now in custody, Inspector Thompson approached Ethan. "We'll need to gather all remaining evidence from your home. This isn't over yet." Ethan left the police station, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The cool night air did little to calm his racing heart as he walked back home. He felt a profound sense of betrayal, knowing that his mother had been the one causing his suffering. But amidst the anger and hurt, there was an aching sadness and a lingering love for the woman who had raised him. As he reached the doorstep of his house, Ethan paused, taking a deep breath to steady himself. He knew he had done the right thing, but the right thing had never felt so wrong. The home he had shared with Emily now felt like a battleground, every corner hiding the shadows of deception and pain. Inside, the house was eerily silent. Ethan headed straight to his room, closing the door behind him. He sank onto his bed, burying his face in his hands. The events of the day replayed in his mind like a relentless loop. He remembered the look of shock and hurt in his mother's eyes as she was led away by the police. It was a look that would haunt him for a long time. "Ethan, you had to do this," he whispered to himself, his voice trembling. "She was hurting you. You couldn't let it continue." But even as he tried to rationalize his actions, the guilt gnawed at him. Emily had always been there for him, caring for him, or so he had believed. The revelation that she had been the one tampering with his medication shattered his trust in her and in his own judgment. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos, memories of happier times, pictures of family vacations, birthdays and simple moments at home. His eyes welled up with tears as he realized that those memories were now tainted by the knowledge of his mother's betrayal. A message notification pulled him out of his thoughts. It was from Dr. Carter. "Hi, Ethan. I know this is a difficult time for you. Please remember that I'm here if you need to talk. We'll get through this together." Ethan stared at the message, feeling a small measure of comfort. Dr. Carter had been a steadfast support through this ordeal, and knowing that he wasn't alone brought a sliver of relief. He replied, "Thank you, Dr. Carter. I appreciate your support. This is all so overwhelming." Setting his phone aside, Ethan lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He felt the weight of exhaustion, but knew sleep would not come easily. His mind was a battlefield, torn between the love for his mother and the necessity of protecting himself. He thought back to the day he had decided to install the camera, the nagging doubts, the growing suspicions, and finally, the undeniable proof. The moment he saw his mother adding the substance to his pills, he had felt a wave of disbelief and horror. How could she do this to him? Why would she betray his trust so completely? Ethan rolled onto his side, curling up into a fetal position. The betrayal felt like a physical wound, deep and raw. He wondered if he could ever fully heal from this. He wondered if he could ever look at his mother the same way again. She must have had a reason, he thought, trying to grasp at some understanding. Maybe she truly believed she was helping me. Maybe she was scared. But no matter how much he tried to empathize, the pain remained. The knowledge that someone he loved and trusted could hurt him so profoundly was a burden he struggled to bear. The next morning, Ethan woke to the first light of dawn creeping through his window. He hadn't slept much, but the clarity of morning brought a renewed sense of purpose. He needed to confront this situation head-on to seek answers and closure. He got dressed and headed to the kitchen, the scene of so much recent turmoil. As he made himself a cup of coffee, the silence of the house was almost suffocating. Memories of the previous night's confrontation played in his mind, but he pushed them aside. The place he had lived for years, but it felt different now. It was a place of both comfort and pain, of memories and betrayals. The courtroom was a solemn, imposing space, its grandeur adding to the tension that filled the air. Ethan sat at the plaintiff's table, his eyes fixed on the judge's bench, while Emily, looking small and frail, sat with her defense attorney. The anticipation was palpable as everyone awaited the judge's decision. "All rise," the bailiff announced as the judge entered the room. Judge Harper, a stern yet fair figure, took his seat and looked out over the courtroom. "You may be seated." Dr. Carter was called to the stand first. As he took his oath, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Dr. Carter's testimony was crucial. "Dr. Carter," the defense attorney began, "can you explain the findings from the tests on Ethan's medication?" Dr. Carter nodded, his expression serious. "The tests confirmed that substances were added to Ethan's medication. These substances are known to cause dependency and can have serious health consequences." "And how did this affect Ethan?" the attorney pressed. "Ethan experienced significant physical and emotional distress. The dependency created by these substances has had a profound impact on his health and well-being," Dr. Carter replied. Emily's defense attorney then stepped forward. "Dr. Carter, could Emily's actions have been motivated by a deep-seated fear for her son's well-being, albeit misguided?" Dr. Carter sighed. "It's possible. Fear can drive people to extreme measures, but it doesn't justify endangering someone's health." As Dr. Carter stepped down, Ethan's heart pounded. He knew his mother's fate hung in the balance. Judge Harper called for a recess before delivering the verdict. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as people speculated on the outcome. Ethan sat alone, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He felt the weight of his mother's actions, the betrayal, but also a deep, lingering love and a desire for her to get the help she needed. When the court reconvened, Judge Harper began to speak. After reviewing the evidence and considering the testimonies, it is clear that Emily's actions, while motivated by fear and love, were harmful and dangerous. Ethan held his breath. "However," the judge continued, "I believe that Emily's actions were the result of a severe psychological condition. Therefore, I am sentencing her to mandatory psychological treatment rather than prison. She will undergo intensive therapy and be monitored to ensure her compliance." A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Emily's face was a mixture of relief and sorrow, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ethan felt a complex mix of emotions, relief that his mother wouldn't be imprisoned, but also a deep sadness for the pain they both had endured. "Thank you, Your Honor," Emily's attorney said, his voice shaking slightly. Ethan approached his mother, their eyes meeting in a silent understanding. "We'll get through this, Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I just want you to get better." Emily nodded, her tears flowing freely. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." As they left the courtroom, Ethan felt a sense of closure and a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but with the court's decision, there was a chance for healing. Emily would start her therapy, and perhaps in time, they could rebuild their lives and their relationship on a foundation of honesty and trust. The therapy room was a haven of calm, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. The walls were adorned with serene paintings, creating an atmosphere of safety and introspection. Dr. Baker, a compassionate and experienced psychologist, sat across from Ethan and Emily, who were attending their first family counseling session. "Welcome, Ethan and Emily," Dr. Baker began, her voice gentle yet firm. "I know this journey hasn't been easy for either of you, but today we take the first step towards healing." Ethan shifted in his seat, his anxiety palpable. Emily sat beside him, her hands tightly clasped in her lap, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Let's start by acknowledging the courage it took for both of you to come here," Dr. Baker continued. "Ethan, can you share what brings you to this session today?" Ethan took a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly. "I want to understand why things happened the way they did. I want to forgive my mum, but it's hard. I need to know that we can move past this." Emily looked at her son, her eyes brimming with tears. "Ethan, I'm so sorry for everything. I was so scared of losing you that I lost sight of what was right. I never wanted to hurt you." Dr. Baker nodded, encouraging them both. "Emily, it's important that you express your feelings honestly. Ethan, it's equally important for you to share your pain and confusion. This is a safe space for both of you." As the session progressed, Dr. Baker guided them through a series of exercises designed to foster understanding and empathy. They talked about their fears, their hopes, and the deep love that still bound them together despite the pain. "Ethan, what do you need from your mum to start healing?" Dr. Baker asked. "I need honesty," Ethan replied, his voice steadier now. "I need to know that we can be open with each other. No more secrets." Emily reached out, her hand trembling as she touched Ethan's. "I promise, Ethan. No more secrets. I will do whatever it takes to make things right." Dr. Baker smiled gently. "This is a good start. Healing will take time, but with commitment and love, you can rebuild your relationship." In the following sessions, they delved deeper into their emotions, working through the layers of hurt and betrayal. Each conversation brought them closer, the distance between them slowly shrinking. Outside of therapy, Ethan and Emily began to implement the changes they discussed. They set aside time each week to talk openly, to share their thoughts and feelings. They started new traditions, like cooking meals together and taking walks in the park, creating positive memories to replace the painful ones. "Mom, I've been thinking about going back to school and finishing my degree," Ethan said one evening as they prepared dinner together. "And maybe you could volunteer at the community center. I think it would be good for both of us." Emily smiled, her heart swelling with hope. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Ethan. Let's do it together." The familiar walls of Dr. Baker's office now felt like a place of refuge rather than confrontation. The warm lighting and soft furnishings created an atmosphere of calm and safety. Ethan and Emily sat side by side, a united front in their journey toward healing. "Ethan, Emily," Dr. Baker began, her voice filled with encouragement. "We've made significant progress. Today, let's focus on your strengths and how you can use them to continue growing individually and together." Ethan nodded, a sense of determination in his eyes. "I want to finish my degree and start a career. I feel like I've lost so much time, but I'm ready to move forward." Emily looked at her son with pride and hope. "And I want to give back to the community. Volunteering has always been something I've thought about, and now I want to make it a reality." Dr. Baker smiled. "Those are wonderful goals. Let's work on breaking them down into actionable steps." In their sessions, Dr. Baker introduced various exercises to help them build on their strengths. For Ethan, it meant focusing on time management and setting academic goals. For Emily, it was about finding volunteer opportunities that aligned with her skills and passions. "Remember," Dr. Baker advised, "celebrate each small victory. Every step forward is progress." At home, the changes were palpable. The house, once filled with tension, now echoed with laughter and shared moments. Ethan and Emily created a weekly schedule for their new activities and ensured they had time set aside for their counseling sessions. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Ethan shared an update. "Mum, I talked to my advisor today. They're allowing me to re-enroll next semester. I'm so excited to get back to my studies." Emily beamed. "That's amazing, Ethan. I'm so proud of you. And guess what? I've been accepted as a volunteer at the community center. I'll be helping with the after-school program." Ethan's eyes lit up. "That's fantastic, Mom. You're going to be great at it." Their conversations, once strained and filled with unspoken fears, now flowed with ease and mutual support. They found joy in each other's successes and comfort in their shared journey. In the following weeks, Ethan dove into his studies with renewed vigor. He joined a study group and found a part-time job to help support himself. The structure and purpose brought a new level of confidence and fulfillment. Emily, on the other hand, thrived in her volunteer role. She connected with the children and found a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. The community center became a second home, a place where she could give back and make a difference. During one of their evening walks, Ethan turned to Emily. "You know, Mum, I'm really proud of us. We've come so far." Emily smiled, her heart full. "We have, Ethan, and I couldn't have done it without you." The bond between them, once fractured, had grown stronger through their shared efforts and determination. They had learned to trust and support each other, creating a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow on the newly decorated living room. The family home, once a place of tension and uncertainty, now radiated warmth and hope. Ethan sat at the dining table, his laptop open and books spread out around him. He was engrossed in his studies, the excitement of learning rekindled within him. Across the room, Emily was busy organizing materials for the community center, her face alight with purpose and contentment. "Mom, look at this design project I'm working on," Ethan called out, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "It's a new app interface and I think it's really coming together." Emily walked over, peering over his shoulder. "That looks fantastic, Ethan. You've really found your calling with this. I'm so proud of you." Ethan smiled, the bond between them stronger than ever. "Thanks, Mom. And how's your work at the community center going?" Emily's face lit up. "It's wonderful. The kids are amazing, and I feel like I'm really making a difference. Plus, I've met some incredible people who are so dedicated to helping others." Their conversations flowed easily, a testament to the progress they had made. The new routines and activities brought a sense of fulfillment and stability to their lives. As the weeks passed, Ethan found himself more engaged with his studies and his part-time job at a local tech startup. The balance between work and school was demanding, but it gave him a sense of purpose and direction. His confidence grew with each project he completed, and the support from his professors and peers was invaluable. Emily thrived in her role at the community center. She organized after-school programs, coordinated events, and even started a mentorship program for at-risk youth. The impact she had on the children and the community was profound, and it brought her immense satisfaction. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Ethan turned to Emily with a thoughtful expression. "Mum, I've been thinking about our future. I want to keep growing, not just in my career, but in our lives together. Maybe we could travel a bit, see new places, and create more memories." Emily's eyes sparkled with excitement. "That sounds like a wonderful idea, Ethan. I've always wanted to see more of the world, and doing it together would be amazing." They began planning their future trips, discussing destinations and experiences they wanted to share. The excitement of new adventures added another layer of joy to their lives. They had rebuilt their relationship on a foundation of honesty, support, and mutual respect. The future, once clouded by uncertainty, now appeared bright and full of possibilities. Ethan and Emily knew that challenges would still come, but they were ready to face them together, armed with the strength they had gained from their experiences.